Well, obviously not the hardest thing in this whole process is really trying to get the class of everything together. And I thought we did a really good job. I thought the coaches did a great job. I thought the recruiting guys did a good job. I think more than anything that the previous staff had set us up in a situation on some really good guys. And the numbers might not have been as large, but I think that for us in particular right now, that's kind of the route we'd rather go, is to, hey, let's don't jump at things and make poor decisions that cost you over a 3 or 4 year period, as opposed to let's make sure we hone in on the guys that they had here in the past, because we know those guys are the ones that fit the culture and the things here, and then let's go after the guys that we know best and the ones that we truly believe from being here for 3 weeks that would fit what it is that we're doing here, both as a football player, but even more so within the culture and environment of what we expect to be playing in. So I think it's a very diverse class. If you look at it, probably a little bit more from all over the place than I would envision in us moving forward. But I think more than anything, that just shows you how strong the brand is and how strong the W is across the country, that you can be in 8 or 9, 10 different states in the midst of one recruiting class. Like I said, though, I think the focus for us moving forward, we'll hone in a little bit more on that 350-mile radius and then the areas which we feel like we're going to know people the best, so we can figure out the best things that we got to offer and the guys that we're going to be able to recruit. But with that being said, we also got to be able to adapt and adjust and recognize that it's a little bit different in the brand that can go across the country, and we got to do our best job in a lot of different areas. So open it up for questions.
Jason.
Could you speak to Amari's skill set and how the recruitment quickly came together after he decommitted?
Well, Amari has been a unique guy that I've known for quite a while, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is how do you go about this short period of time and go with the guys that you believe that obviously not just can play but can fit to what we're doing. And Amari was unique. One of the more unique things was he was a guy that was going to be a two-sport athlete. So he was going to be a football player and a baseball player. Well, the uniqueness is we don't have a baseball team. So we had to kind of find out where his heart really was. And we never had any doubt on how good of a player he is and where he fits best. But it was really going to come down to, hey, are you willing to give up the baseball and really kind of hone all your skills into one thing? And I think his original thought was going into college, he wanted to have the option to do both. But he recognized the opportunities here and what this could mean for his future. And he's a guy that I think that has a lot of flexibility, how he grows and how much stronger he gets. We see him as a corner. We see him as a guy that's got a lot of growth potential. But we envision him kind of starting off on the outside and seeing how well he fits in all the different things that we want to be able to do.
Jeff.
You obviously had to dive into try to build a relationship with guys that you had to recruiting until you got here. But you got 3 guys from Cincinnati who obviously, I'm guessing, would spend months on recruiting. The assumption might be that it was easier to get those guys to come here. Was it easier or not, or how much did your past relationship play into their decision?
Well, I think you go twofold. I mean, you could say it's the easier route. In reality, it's not. I mean, those are guys we've known for over a couple years. And I'm not saying we went after every guy that we had a relationship with or we had known over the past time at Cincinnati. There was a few others, others that went some other places, whether it's the SEC or a lot of other schools that obviously we knew and believed that they could play at a very, very high level. We also looked at some of the guys that we had recruited in the past and said, okay, now we got to make sure we know what fits to what is that we want to do. We know their skill sets as far as a football player, but we also got to be, really intelligent and wise and to say, hey, let's put guys into situations where they can be successful. We talked about Amari as one that, we had to take a guy that, had plans to do both and say, okay, well, that's not the option here, and then there's other guys that we, really loved and as a player and as a person, but we also said, okay, I'm not sure this is the best fit for you in the whole picture. And that's why I said that it might be a little bit smaller. There might be 3 guys that maybe we had recruited at Cincinnati and maybe had been committed, but those are the ones we knew the best. We knew darn well and truly believed that they don't just fit here as a player, but they fit here as a culture and all the things that are going to be expected of them.
Cool.
One offensive lineman in the class so far, at least. Obviously, there's more time. But do you see that as a position where you might seek a transfer, or do you see that as something you're just going to continue building, considering the strength that they've had recruiting offensive line the last few years here?
I would say that's probably the one area where we didn't want to just jump at guys. There's obviously an incredible history here in offensive linemen, and so we didn't want to just kind of throw, ourselves out there and say, okay, well, we need to take 3 guys, so let's just go take 2 other guys. It's pretty specific, and the standard is incredibly high of what the expectations are here to play offensive line, and so maybe that means there will be a guy or 2 that we can, take that are younger, that maybe a transfer guy, but they got to fit the mold. They got to fit what it is, and the expectations here are incredibly high. And to be honest with you, we talked to a few guys, and I think some of them were afraid of that. They might have been afraid of what the expectations were going to be like, and if they are, then this isn't the right place for them. And so that's why I'm as proud as anybody of the coaches and the recruiting staff of not just taking, hey, there's somebody that wants to come here. No, let's make sure we're going to get the guys that we know can be successful here. And if it's not the right thing for us and for them, then we don't want to put them in that situation. So I think we still have some work to do, whether that's through January and into that second signing day in February, or even some guys to fill some holes and some depth as younger guys that could be possible transfers.
Jake.
So Luke, with looking at that class on paper, 6 defensive backs altogether, and whatnot, what went into having so many defensive backs? Was that part of your plan, or did things kind of just work out that way?
Well, I think if you look at the roster a little bit, we're really strong, obviously, at the safety position. Maybe not as much depth in the younger, in the corner position. So it was one of those areas where we said, okay, these are the guys we feel like we've got the best connection with, that fit what it is that we want to do. And I think that there is some space there, and where there's some really high-end guys that might be a little bit older, that have played some ball and will be returning starters. I think that that was one of those areas, a little bit like offensive line, even though we didn't get the offensive lineman, that we felt like, okay, we know these guys the best. We know they fit what it is that we want to be able to do and in the culture and environment that we're going to put them in. So that's kind of where it became, I wouldn't say an overload. I think it's really kind of balances out our numbers in that area. We just left ourselves some space with whether it's in the offensive line or even the wide receiver position to, not jump at things and find out with this later signing date into January and February, and maybe even the transfers can give us.
Coach, you're one Wisconsin guy, Nate White. Obviously, you're just kind of getting to know him, but can you just speak to what you know of him so far? And I don't know how much you really got a chance to study him, but just your thoughts on him.
Got to spend some time with Nate and his family. One of the, not the few guys, but one of the guys I actually got to do a home visit with. And to me, that's a big deal, is to be able to get into guys' homes, sit in their homes, and recognize a lot of different things, how their family dynamics are, how they've grown up. And to me, helps me, as he gets here, to be able to, guide him, help him, motivate him, and lead him over the next 4 or 5 years. And really got to know him pretty well. Obviously, great family. Both the parents are administrators in the public school system, and he's a guy that'll run track here in the spring and will be here obviously in the summer. Not an early enrollee guy, but I think that there's a bright future for him. Very dynamic as a football player. He might not look like some of the, maybe walking in the door like maybe some of the historic Wisconsin tailbacks have looked like, but it's amazing what those guys will look like after about 2 years here too. So he's got the attributes that we're talking about, and I think he's got the well-roundedness that really makes, from what I know, guys really successful here.
Evan.
Coach, I think you got 6 of the 7 guys that took official visits here in December. I'm curious, as someone who was not here that long, what was the key to getting such a high success rate on those December official visits in crunch time when you're trying to sell a place where you haven't even coached a game at yet?
Well, I think first is getting them on campus. That's so critical. Even if there was a little bit of snow on the ground, most of those guys had been here before. Some of those guys had been committed and then maybe were decommitted. But to me, it's all about relationships. And the time that you have them here, your ability to kind of reconnect, build that relationship. In our case, we hadn't had a great relationship with them. A lot of the guys, to be honest with you, that we've recruited and gotten in the past probably have had a relationship with them for over a year, 2 years. And so I don't know if you call it speed dating, but I think just the ability to, be real with them, give them an opportunity to kind of walk into all of us and the changes that we are acquiring, and, get them to trust you. I think that more than anything, that's what the weekends are all about. I told them that when we started the weekends. This is about building and continuing this relationship. This is about walking out of here after 48 hours and knowing as much about each other as we possibly can, so that you guys feel, and I'm talking about parents-wise and players, feel comfortable in us and who we are and where we're headed.
Jeff?
Kind of back to Nate White for a second. Some coaches they'd like to add 2 tailbacks in a cycle. Some don't have a number. Do you have a strong tailback room right now with Nate? Do you have enough tailbacks there, or do you anticipate, as you continue to recruit, perhaps adding a body?
I wouldn't say that we would look at adding a body. I think that there's a really good makeup. I think that it is obviously right now, if you guys look at it and you know the names of the guys at the top of the list are a little bit heavier. You always got to have balance throughout that. So I think that as we get into the rest of this bowl prep, we feel good about what it is that we've got. I think that you're always going to say, look, I think that's a position of strength, obviously, in the history here. It's not a position, in my opinion, that you want to go out there and find a transfer. It's the guys that you want to be able to bring in and help develop in a lot of the things that we're doing. Is there somebody still out there? I think numbers-wise we'll be down one in our vision and what we want scholarship-wise going into the fall. So if there is a high school guy here in January that we vision as a guy that could be a future great tailback for us, then we wouldn't hesitate on bringing him in. I think with the 2 older guys, you have a good chance to lose the top 2 guys after this season, and that's what I would expect, because we always expect to have great years, and for Brennan to have the type of year that he has the very good decisions to make. So I think that's another one of those positions that can turn over pretty quick. So you've always got to have some depth there and got to have some confidence in those young guys.
Jesse?
When you evaluated Colton Cruz's film, what did you like about him, and why did you feel like he would still be a good fit, even though he obviously committed under the previous staff?
Well, I think first and foremost, we trust the guys that evaluated him in the past. Now, as you walk in the door, you've got to do your own evaluation. We went and watched him. I didn't watch him. Coach Brown went and watched him play in the state championship game. And as you guys asked, what are you looking for in a quarterback? And we could all sit here and give you standards and height, weight, speed, arm strength, and all these different things. And I've told you the top 2 things for me are leader, and competitor. The guy that's finding a way to win. And if I had to say the top 2 things about Cole, I'd say he's a leader and he's a competitor and he's a winner and won a state championship for his team this year. And those kinds of things, you can say whatever you want to say. Well, he's got a great team. No, there's leaders in those things, and winners win. And I can't tell you the truth of knowing exactly what the competition, and you pop on the film sometimes in an area like Colorado that I don't know a ton about. So it's a little bit harder to say what they're playing against, but it's not hard to say a team that went to the state championship and won the state championship and who's the leader of that team. And that's the best thing. I know when Coach Brown came back from that state championship game that he felt more than anything, he said, this guy's a winner, this guy's a leader. And for me, on top of all the other things, we felt like he fits what it is that we want to do. I think he's a great fit.
Zach?
Luke, you mentioned the word fit. You use the word fit a lot in this press conference. When you're recruiting, what is that fit that you're looking for?
Well, if you're talking about quarterbacks, there's a lot of different things. Okay, we talked about those things, but to me, it's those guys are going to be able to walk in the door and really understand what a team really looks like. And I'm not saying everybody does. We're going to have every walk of life known to man, but your guys that are going to be leaders, your guys, especially in that quarterback room, that I think fit-wise, they've got to be a guy that the way they do anything is the way they do everything. They have to have an expectation, and you might call it tough, but if I look at the grade sheets of a quarterback room and they're not all 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, I would be kind of curious. I didn't say that about D-line. I was a former D-lineman, and some of us might not do as well in school at times. But I think when we're talking about fit, what it is you're looking for in those particular guys in those particular rooms, and then what it is that they're going to be willing to do, asked to do, right? To be a part of something bigger than themselves, and especially at the position like quarterback, in those ones that you expect to be leaders on the team. I think when you're finding the right guys, you want to make sure you're putting a guy in a situation where he can be successful. And I think so fit. I'm still learning exactly what all fits are in this place in particular, but that's why I've wanted to be here for the last 3 weeks. That's why I want to be around these guys. I tell them, this is your team. When we bring those guys in on the weekend, yes, the coaches spend time with the families and the guys, but we want the players to spend time with them because they want them to be the right fit, meaning that they get along with those guys and they feel like they're going to be brothers to them, and that goes a long way to me. because the expectations, the things we're going to ask them to do, if they don't enjoy to be around the people within that locker room, it's really, really difficult to do the things to the level that we want to do them.
Zach.
This morning, PJ Fleck held his press conference and mentioned that one of the guys that they signed ended up saying that you guys negatively recruited against them late in the cycle. Do you take any issue with that accusation, or is that just recruiting?
I know nothing about. I've never, and I won't negative recruit. I'm not saying that somebody didn't call. I know we maybe reached out to somebody, but I wouldn't think that we would have said anything negative about a guy going anywhere. You know, we've got plenty of positive to say about what it is that we do. Some people would say, well, that's recruiting. No, I don't think that's recruiting. I mean, we got enough good things to say about the program here and the things that we want to do and where we're headed to worry about saying anything negative about anybody else. So I don't get involved in a lot of the negative recruiting stuff, whether people say it about us or they say we say it about them. Really focus on the things that we do and the positive things that we've got going for us.
Jake.
So, Luke, with someone like Christian Allegro who took a post-grad year, how do you evaluate a player that's taken a post-grad year like that, where I think the former staff recruited him as a tight end, but then now you have him listed as an outside linebacker, and what are the parameters that you have for a player like that?
I don't know that there's anything we look at as far as what's different about a post-grad guy. I think, to me, as much as anything, you're just trying to find the competition that they're playing against. He was a younger kid that, if he's a post-grad guy, maybe he's 1 year older. I still think he's a guy that where he is now and where he can be in 2 to 3 years is far different. And meaning that he's got a lot of growth potential, meaning his physically, obviously the ball that he's played. So that's what excites me about him, whether he was a high school senior or a post-grad guy. I think it's just another opportunity for them to, continue to build what it is they've done. And, you take a guy like maybe my own kids that grow up in a system where they're going to start lifting at 7th grade and they're going to be playing football. And not every place is like that. So I think whether a guy goes to a 5th year post-grad or a guy that, comes from northern Wisconsin that plays 8-man football, you're looking at the potential down the road. And I think when you talk about fits and things like that, that's what we're talking about where are they now and where do you believe they're going to be. If they're the type of person that's going to, embrace the culture and the things that you're going to ask them to do, it's amazing how much more they'll grow and change within the next 2 years. And I look at Christian as that, whether he's in his 5th year and a post-grad year, I just look at a guy that's really mature. He's got an incredible growth and upside that will be completely different, I think, in 2 years.
Mark.
Luke, I think you mentioned one of the guys is going to be an early enrollee. Can you tell us which other guys are going to enroll early and what, if you can, and just what value do you put on that?
Well, I think we've got about 6 of those guys that are going to be early enrollees, to be honest with you. I know that it is an incredible benefit. I don't know that it's for everybody. And my son did it 2 years ago, and I was one of those guys that would say that I would never envision my son or somebody, my kids doing that. I'd say, no, finish out your senior year. It's the great time that you've got, and you've got an opportunity. But I think a lot of these guys get into a situation where, hey, it's going to be an incredible asset for them. And I know for us as a football program, to have them in the spring football, to have them there in the winter, is an incredible asset. I mean, going into fall camp, they are light years beyond where they are when they walk in as, in the summer. Now, the good thing for the summer stuff now is you're allowed to spend time with guys in the last few years. So you get those 2 hours a week to do football with young guys as they come in the door. So that gives those guys a chance. But the benefit of being in the winter, where you're working out and lifting and around the guys, the spring ball, which spring ball is all about development. Spring ball is all about fundamentals. Spring ball is all about the building of a team, where when you get to fall camp, it's different. We don't focus on fundamentals and team in fall camp. No, we do. But fall camp is about preparing to win football games. And you go at a pace which makes it difficult a lot of times on younger guys. So those guys that come in the spring have a great advantage. They know what to expect when the summer hits and they get into fall camp. So I think we've got 6, maybe 7 of those guys that will be here. I think January 14th, which 15th, whatever that is, will be a great advantage for them and for us as well.
Colton.
Luke, you mentioned today and then multiple other times you're past as a defensive lineman, so does not having one in this class hurt you, or do you?
Yeah, it gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. There's a little bit of a, unsettling feeling not seeing 2 or 3 defensive linemen. I think, like I said, again, if you look at it, we weren't just going to jump at some. I think there's going to definitely be some options and some opportunities here in January that we're going to do a really good job on guys that we were in on and the guys that hadn't signed. But that'll be a focus for us in January, like we talked about a little bit with the offensive line possibly as well. But defensive line definitely will be a focus. Just from being out here the last few, I think that we're top heavy. I think we've got some older guys in the D line room that have played a lot of ball for us. I think we're going to have to do a good job in 1 or 2 guys here in January. Maybe even a transfer young guy possibly that could be somebody that grows for the future as well. But there's a lot more balance that we need to do as you look at the whole entire list. Whether it's only 12 guys or not, there's a better balance that we need to do, and focusing in on the areas where we want to do our best job. I don't envision, and maybe it will be, but I don't envision to be 10 states with 12 guys. If it does, it does, but I don't envision that. I do envision, a little bit heavier on the O-line and D-line in the future. But I think more than anything, if you get one thing out of this, we didn't want to just jump into things that we didn't believe were the right fit. As opposed to just signing guys. So, everybody would say, just go ahead and sign them, and that you can lose them in a year. The way the world is guys leave and guys come. That's not the culture. That's not the environment we want to create. We want guys to walk in the door here, not thinking about, well, if it doesn't go well for me in the first year, I'll be out of there. No, we want guys walking in the door, say what might be really difficult in year 1, maybe even difficult in year 2, but what it's going to bring me in the long run is what's is going to provide success for them as an individual and us as a team.
Jesse.
To follow up on that question, you've mentioned offensive line, defensive line, potentially wide receiver as position groups you might evaluate here. Are there other position groups or areas you think from now through the February signing period are most important?
I mean, we have some flexibility and some freedom. You hope you don't lose any other guys. If you do, then you're going to have to look at where you need to kind of focus maybe some of those areas. But I think as we go into January, we know the O-line, with only having 1, and the D-line with a few of the guys that we've been on and we will stay on. I think those are the main areas, and then possibility with wide receiver that whether it's finish some things out even today or into January. There's some things that we've been on that we hopefully can close the deal on here soon.
Jim.
Is your staff put together, or is that still a work in progress? Are you still?
It's still a work in progress. Another one of those things you didn't want to jump into. We knew we had some pieces that were going to be in place right away, and there's still things that are happening even with some of those guys. So it's one of those things that, boy, I would sleep a little bit better knowing I had a couple D linemen on that list. Where we are in the future quarterback wise, and then if you had your complete staff solidified, I think you'd feel a little bit better. Or I would feel a little bit better and sleep a little bit better. But I think it's a part of the process, and more than anything, just like the recruiting, we didn't want to just jump into things. We wanted to do things the right way.
John.
Just kind of on top of the staff question, there's an interesting dynamic with having a staff that's coaching the bowl prep and a staff that just, it seemed like, focused on recruiting. What kind of opportunity did that present for you guys?
It was a limited staff just doing the recruiting. I think that being in this situation in 2011, tried to be really mindful about what was going on the field and what's going to give us the best opportunity to play a game. And so while we've had a bunch of that staff here for the future, have tried to keep them a little bit more distant from the things within the offices. So they have been able to focus a little bit more on recruiting, but it's difficult at times. You're trying to recruit D linemen and you don't have a D line coach. You're trying to recruit a corner and you can't really tell them who's going to be their coach. So some of those dynamics, we've got to try to overcome. We've had to try to overcome, and that's why that I still think that January can be an opportunity and a time where we're going to be able to push it hard with a full staff and know who, those guys will have a better grasp on who's going to be coaching them, and I think that'll go well for us in January.
Got time for probably 2 more. Jeff.
Luke, you mentioned wanting to bring in guys who understand. Hey, it may be tough in year 1, maybe even year 2. You played and coached for the most part in an era where you didn't have as much freedom as a player. If you did transfer, you had to sit out a year. Is it getting more difficult to find kids who are willing to say, I may have to wait a year, maybe 2, Or has it changed that much in the last few years?
I don't really think it's changed. I think that no matter when I was coming into school, there is a little bit of athletic arrogance that you want in your kids to think when they walk in the door they're going to play. You want them to have a realization that they're going to have to recognize that it's going to be very difficult if you've got a program that they want to be at. But I think more than anything, when the transfer portal came apart, of college football, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or something, I remember saying to our staff, saying, this is going to be a good thing for us. And they were like, well, does that mean you're going to take kids out of the transfer portal? I said, no, it's going to help us build better relationships and remind us of the relationships that we need to build with our players because they have options. So you can look at it one way or the other, whether it's a positive or a negative. So I use it in a way to say, let's remember now, every one of those young kids, they have options. And the only thing that's going to keep them here is their relationship. Even their success on the field, playing this, that, and the other thing, there's still going to be options for them, as we see today, whether people are contacting people and offering things. Like, those are all great. But if you've got that relationship, if you've created a culture, if you've created an environment, that obviously winning helps, but that you've got that culture and that environment that guys want to be, they feel like they're growing, they can trust the people that are around them, I believe that's the only way you can get them to stay, no matter what it is that you're doing, no matter how much success they're having. But all in all, I think it reminds us of the job that we really have to do and the way that which we need to do it.
One more, Raul.
Luca, for a few of the guys, it was a matter of reconnecting with them just with a different logo. What do you think the staff has done well, where it feels like the players want to play for the staff particularly? What do you think you guys have done well?
Well, I think first and foremost is the hard part of that balance between some of the new coaches being around here and being around the players that are on the current roster. You don't want them out there on the field, being around what's going on, but connecting with those guys so that they feel first and foremost that this is the place that they want to stay. Everybody wants to talk about recruiting, but it's still first and foremost about recruiting your own guys, as well as, in a short amount of time. I mean, you're trying to build a relationship. There's a lot of guys that obviously were committed to the program, and I think that those aren't the hard ones to get back. It's the guys that were originally committed to a person, and it happens, right? I mean, Coach Leonard is a great guy, and there's some great connections and great relationships with a guy like that. And so our ability to come in a short amount of time and connect those relationships to make them not just recognize who we are, but also what keeps you at a place like this. Yes, it might be draws you in that relationship, but it's the guys in that locker room, it's the logo, it's the history and the culture that keeps you to where you are. So we had a balancing act. I thought our guys did a great job of that. I thought our recruiting staff did a great job of that. And I think the current staff did a great job at helping us to bridge that gap and to get those relationships rolling.